Welcome to the Ripples of Change, the podcast that explores how our presence and self-awareness shape the way change unfolds. I'm interested in conversations that help us understand what shapes people, what motivates them, how they make meaning, and how their lived experience informs how they lead and create change. So I'm excited to explore this with my guest, Simcha Zevit. Welcome, Simcha.
Thanks, Abby. I'm excited to be here. Thanks
Super.
for having me.
So Simcha is a whole being leadership coach, a rabbi, and a spiritual care provider. You have been, at least. Yeah. So as we start, Simcha, what feels most alive in your work right now?
Hmm. Well, that's a great that's a great opener. Um, what feels most alive? Well, this notion, I mean, on the larger scale, it really is about how we help ourselves and others. It's the line I've been using for a long time, which feels so right to me. Have more access to more of ourselves. And so the question of how we do that is very alive. I have a few different ideas about that, but that in general is the idea. We have so much capacity, and we're very good at thinking. We're very good at taking in information and trying to make sense of it. But in this world that we're living in, as you well know, as we're all saying, um, the complexity is, I just feel like it's almost an imperative, for us and for the people that we help and support to tap into more of what is possible, both within us and the impact that we can have by that inner work.
Hmm. Can you share a moment or a story when you've seen you yourself have tapped into more of what's possible, or you've seen a client tap into that?
Hmm, sure. Um, Well, I'm going to go with a client first. I'm sure I can come up with plenty of my own stories, but I was thinking about a client recently who I was helping as they were preparing to interview. They weren't even sure whether they were going to leave their leadership role in a healthcare institution or stay and what they wanted to do, but they had started interviewing. And as they were talking about the interview process, I just noticed how fast this person was speaking. And, anxiety, I think, is the most contagious emotion,
Mm,
if it's an emotion, but it's the most contagious sense that other people can sense, and it's catchy.
yeah.
And the rate of her speech was just so, is what got me curious and what stood out to me. And so I I pointed that out, and asked her what she was feeling and had her tune into her body. And she became aware of the anxiety and she practiced just speaking at a slower rate because of course breath is a part of that. And it just then when we practiced role playing some of the interview questions, and it was like I believed what she said, you know
Mm,
because it came from a different place in her. So accessing a little bit more calm, a little bit more of the way that the nervous system is impacted by the rate of speech, by our own self-awareness of what we're feeling. So that's an example. It was just like, wow, just pausing, slowing down, coming from a less agitated place affected how she felt about her answers. The answer didn't change. It was just that she was speaking about them from a different place.
mm.
So that's an example.
Speaking about them from a different place.
Yeah, yeah,
Let's
not
say
just from
more.
the head, you know?
Ah, mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So that's an example. I think we often we're so focused on working from, one part of ourselves. And for many of us, it is the thought, right? It's being driven by ideas and thoughts and rational ways of figuring things out. And there's just so much more that's possible in terms of coming from a fuller place in
Mhm.
ourselves.
Well, you've just given one example, and I'm wondering if you have another example of what happens when you enable yourself or people to tap into more of themselves.
Yeah. Um, Another example. Um, I was with a client last week who, um, we greeted each other on Zoom, as you and I did. And right away, this person was, I'm good, I'm fine, I'm flourishing, like using like, and kind of. And oftentimes I'll start my work with clients with slowing down, with doing a very short breath or meditation, or depending on, only when the client wants to do that. And we did that, and this person emerged from that tearful, and sort of just in touch with her heart, because she had a lot going on. And, when her head is always, wanting to be in control and wanting to affirm that she's got it together. And that's, we need that sometimes. But having the space to kind of actually feel the level of what was going on for her was it had to do with family issues in that moment. But being able to name that emotion and express it just kind of loosened up,
Mm,
really had her feeling a little bit more like she could control, because she could be with what was, as opposed to kind of pushing it away. And
mm,
when we use a lot of our energy to push things away, I think we, again, we're cutting off part of the energy, part of the possibility of, what we bring to situations.
mm. This sounds connected to your concept of whole being and accessing the whole being. So can
Yeah.
you talk about how this worked, how you came to this notion of whole being?
I can, yeah. So it really comes for me out of, decades, decades of curiosity, about, I mean, when I was a kid, questions about like, who's in charge, my head or my heart? Because I was aware that I might feel one thing, but like my head said something else. Those kinds of existential questions that we, most of us ask at some point or other. But from a pretty young age, I was interested in questions that I thought were psychological questions, but actually were spiritual questions as well. Um, and eventually, I was heading towards becoming a therapist, and I was doing some work at the Gestalt Institute of Cleveland. And so that was a place where, the work was very much about being in touch, being present to whatever was unfolding, as you worked with yourself and as you worked with clients. Um, and then fast forward, I wound up jumping ship from becoming a therapist to becoming a rabbi. And I did that when I found the movement within which I was ordained, which is called Jewish Renewal, which it really takes very much what we call a four worlds approach to Jewish life. And four worlds is kind of a mystical concept that we are composed of, to simplify it, of body, heart, mind, and spirit.
Mm.
And so, that's been a very foundational piece for me. And then fast forward to my becoming a coach, and I found a place called the Wholebeing Institute, which I was like, okay, they've got had me at hello, because the name kind of mirrored this approach, um, you know, to not leave out parts of ourself as we're doing this work of growing ourselves and helping others to do the same.
I love that. Not leaving out parts of ourselves.
Easier
Lovely.
easier said than done.
Yeah. Mm. I'll say more about that. What makes, easier said than done? Say more about that piece.
Yeah.
What makes that difficult? Yeah.
Yeah. We are, creatures of habit, and we are socialized beings. And I think we all have like, ingrained patterns of how we think, how we behave. And so becoming aware of those gives us the choice for alternatives, right? That rather than doing something kind of along the ingrained pattern that we have when we're aware, oh, I'm automatically jumping to this, when actually maybe there's a different way of thinking about something or a different way of reacting or being in relationship to someone.
Hmm. And the fact that you let that woman, that you invited her to slow down and just meditate for a second, which which may have enabled her to get past the ingrained pattern or the habit. Does that sound right?
Yeah, yeah. And with her, it wasn't even meditate. It was literally like meditate used, how you. I'm also a mindfulness. I did training in mindfulness.
Uh-huh.
I'm a certified mindfulness teacher, but it was really just taking a moment to slow down, feel her breath, and see what she was aware of. So yeah, a mindful moment.
Mindful,
Um,
yes, good.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, I should have said mindful. Yeah,
yeah.
lovely. I know you're involved with the inner development goals. So I came across a one sentence definition,
Oh, great.
which
I
I want
love
to,
elevator speeches. People are always asking. I'm like, I'm not so great sometimes at elevator speeches. Tell me what's your one sentence?
okay, here we go. They focus on cultivating inner capacities such as empathy, resilience, and critical thinking to address global challenges.
Mm,
Did you like that definition?
I do.
Yep. So here's the question.
Yeah.
What drew you to the inner development goals in the first place?
Yeah. Um, so I was in a course through Coaches Rising. It's called Reimagining Leadership. And I think it was Peter Hawkins that was teaching about systems thinking. And he showed us this 5-minute film on the inner development goals. And I just watched this and I would just had this huge, like, have you ever had those moments where it's just like a big yes? Like I
Uh-huh.
felt it in I just was super excited. I think the message was a message that I already had ingrained in me in terms of what I want my coaching work to be about, how I want to help the world. But the language that was used, the incredible people that are behind this and involved in it, and the thinkers that helped create inner development goals. Now it's called Inner Development Guide.
Oh,
Um,
mhm.
and some of the quotes from that 5 minutes have stayed with me. So it was just a huge yes. And I said in the class to Peter Hawkins, I said, how do we get more involved in this? And he's like, well, you're a leader, like embody your leadership principles and see who else is interested. So out of that class, I think there were maybe 8 of us coaches that decided to form what's called a hub, because we're not all, or no, it's called a network. Hubs are when there's local groups of people working on this inner development guide together, and a network is people spread out to keep talking about it, learning about it, spreading the word about it. And that's been going on for, I don't know, I want to say a year and a half, maybe.
Well,
Yeah.
nice. Yeah. So, so it was a big yes. Um, what did the goals or the guide name or legitimize that you were already sensing in your own development?
Mm, great. Well, I loved your one sentence. It was very good.
It wasn't
But
mine. I mean, I
it was
found
it
it.
was good. But I think I would just say that the basic idea that that inner work is necessary and foundational for growing the outer impact that we have. And so that's already something that I was thinking about. But what I loved here too was the specific way that Inner Development Goals as an organization was framing that to meet the needs of the UN Sustainability Development Goals. Um, yeah, to think about, imagine a world where those sustainability development goals would actually come to be. And this is almost where kind of faith comes in, right? Because those sustainability development goals talk about no poverty, education for everyone, breathing clean air. They paint the picture of the world that is not yet, but that, that's what faith is believing that what is not yet here is possible.
Mm.
And I like to lean into that. And I feel like this organization is doing that like at scale, globally, turning people onto this message and helping people think about it and actualize how do you do this inner, pay attention to the inner life in such a way and the relational life. And, there's more to it than just the inner, because it's about relating and collaborating and action as well. But how do we do this to make the kinds of changes in this world that, I mean, I feel the emotion coming up just talking about it. Like we need to, something has to happen here. Something has to shift. It's like a consciousness shift. Um,
Mhm.
and I can get on board with that.
Mm. Would you be willing to share what that emotion is about for you?
Um, yeah, I think, when I think about what's needed in today's world, and again, that phrase seems so crazy because there's been, like you could probably say today's world at many many other stages, but for us, you know with everything happening in our country, in the world at large, I just feel the sadness and the yearning really for something different. I think that's what the emotion is. It's like, how can I make a difference? How can I help other people make a difference? And for me, we all have our different ways of thinking about what's needed and what we can do. But for me, this piece of the kind of work that the inner development goals does is it just fits very much with how I see my own um, calling, if you will, or my own purpose here now at this time.
That's lovely. When you said the word yearning, my own heart just kind of did one of
Mm,
these
yeah,
expanding things. That word, yeah, go ahead.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think that's the gap, right? When we talk about sort of the leadership gap between what is and what can be, right? I mean, it's the gap between what is happening and what's possible around peace and justice and so much more.
Right.
Yeah,
Something we need more of right now.
for sure.
I don't know if you've already answered this, so you tell me if there's more to this, but how have the inner capacities of the IDGs shown up or been tested in your lived experience as a coach or a leader or a rabbi?
Mm. Um, well, in some ways it go there. I mean, there are many different, there's lots of pieces to that, but I think one of them is it showed up in that story about the interview, with like sort of when I was being ordained as a rabbi. I remember one of my big teachers who came to speak with all of us before the ceremony, where we would be ordained. And what he said was, because we all gave, we had a chance to give a speech to talk about what this moment meant to us. And he said, what people will remember is not so much what you said, but how you made them feel. We've heard that, right? And where it and the way that the impact happens is where it comes from in you. And so I think, and that takes in the inner development goals, there's a being column, and in the being column is presence. And so presence and self-awareness are two of the pieces that sort of, I think, make a difference around where something comes from in you when you're, aware of your own body and heart and mind and spirit all at the same time, because you're really in alignment.
Yeah.
And then I think so. That's one answer, is that being column shows up for sure. But yeah, there are plenty of other pieces to that.
Hmm. Let's go with that one. So, the being and the presence. Is there a moment in your work when your own presence mattered more than what you did or you said, and
Mm,
what you noticed in yourself at that point?
Yeah. So I'll go back. My trajectory of working as a rabbi and starting a nonprofit, I've had several different iterations of the work that I do, but one of them was working in uh, hospitals as a hospital chaplain. And I think the way that I would enter a room
Mm,
and initially start a conversation with someone um, had an impact on their willingness to talk to me, right?
hmm
A chaplain is not the most, shall we say, highly respected role in the hospital. Like, oh, the chaplain's coming. Um, Many people have a very outdated notion of what a chaplain is, like the religious person that comes to pray kind of thing. Um, and it's really so much more than that. It's really that's all about presence and being able to be that person when somebody who's very sick, can not have to feel okay to make their family feel okay, or be the good patient for their doctor. I mean, they can just say what is so. And so there's something about I think my own comfort in my own skin in that role, and just greeting people, just human to human as opposed to role, caretaker to patient, or just heart to heart, human to human, um, opening way of greeting somebody. And I think that actually made people feel able to speak. There were many, many times where people were like, I can't believe I'm talking to the chat. Like, they were shocked that they were going to the places they went to in our conversations.
mm. That's so moving.
Hmm. Yeah, it's a sacred, which is, I mean, I see coaching in the same way. The subject matter is very different. But, there's a sacredness to it to create that space where um, people can be very real.
I love that word, sacred.
Sacred. Yeah. What does it bring up for you, or what's,
There is a difference, as you said, between doing that in the hospital with a patient versus in coaching, but there's
sure.
something sacred about the space that we create together, the two
Hmm.
of us, um, that where someone can be vulnerable, can share what's most important to them. And for myself, I feel deep privilege that somebody's sharing something with me that's so important to them. That's
Yeah,
an enormous privilege.
agreed. Yeah.
Mm, mhm. When people open up to you in that way, would you be willing to share what you notice happening in yourself?
Hmm. Um, it's almost like I don't know what the right word is, but it's almost like a reinforcing loop
Mm,
in a way that my own um, presence deepens in the context of somebody
mm.
else, so it's almost like a reinforcing loop of how that feeling of connection, that feeling of presence, um, that when both people are able to be there, that it just, and I think increases, it doesn't always happen, of course, but increases the capacity for both of us then to go deeper, right? So it's a feeling of connection and presence, and I don't think I'm aware of it in the moment, but because I'm just there. But I think if I look back on those experiences, it's kind of that feeling of being in the right place at the right time, doing the right thing. Um,
Yep.
yeah, so that's how I think I describe it.
This idea about your own presence deepening, that that's such a rich idea
Hmm,
that presence can actually grow and increase, seems to me.
yeah. I think so. I think the more we realize that we don't have to be brilliant or say something, you know, say the, that it really is about being there, being connected, creating space. And so you kind of relax into the session with the client, the more present you can be and take away a need to perform or have a particular outcome or influence the conversation in a particular direction or way. And again, easier said than done, you know,
Hmm.
definitely easier said than done.
You've worked in hospital systems. I mean, and I think you've done some consulting in organizations, but I don't, where is your attention being drawn now in terms of at the individual level or the larger level?
Mm. Um, so that's not an either or. I mean, I know you didn't mean it that way, but yeah, I think it's a both and for me. I mean, I love doing one-on-one coaching. Um, and I'm also very interested in communities and organizations. I mean, I use the language of, sort of mission-driven organizations, organizations that are seeking to do good in the world. And I think I mentioned to you that one of the things that I'm really drawn to right now is this whole notion of bringing this process called um, the polarity approach to continuity and transformation. So bringing polarity thinking because of all the divisiveness, because of all the ways that we are feeling separate, that people are feeling disconnected both from themselves and from other people. So it's about creating spaces where we can hold more complexity in relationships. And for me, certainly not exclusively, but as a rabbi, bringing my sort of my rabbi's hat and my coaching hat together and being able to do this in Jewish communities and organizations is a big area of richness and interest for me right now.
Hmm. It sounds like we've talked about this. I mean, the polarization in this country and what you're hoping to do to help people hold more complexity and maybe build bridges across the, the poles. Um, and I'm just wondering if you can speak to how this work contributes to healing at the systems level or the community level.
Mm. Um, I'm debating where to apply this. Um, well, I think the word healing is, I mean, it's etymologically, is that the right language? That related to the word for wholeness.
Ah,
Yeah,
oh.
yeah, it comes from the word for wholeness. And so I think that when we have communities or organizations, like let me use an example that it doesn't necessarily feel super alive, but it's just an easy one to say right now. Is like um, well, one of the organizations that I've been working with and part of actually sort of has a little bit of a polarity of like centralizing, like do we have like who's, or having the work be spread out, right? Decentralizing. Um, and when you're only seeing the benefit of one side of that, because they're both like a lot of value in both of those poles. And when you're stuck in only the way that you've always done it because you're sure that that's the right way, even though it's not really working great, right? You're missing the opportunity of the value of the other side of the pole. So that's an example. So when you can help teams or organizations see that there are two opposing, what we call polarities or wicked dilemmas or paradox or whatever language you want to use, and see the positive side of both, right? Not that everybody always has to agree or that one's right over the other, but find the positive value of two
Right.
contradicting values, then you're opening up a
Yeah.
side that has been unseen.
So can I ask you, can you
Yeah.
think of one moment where you've actually seen this happen?
Well, I mean, I will go with. just because it's the most alive example for me personally right now. But the notion of in many Jewish communities, we have many people who believe that their Judaism is manifested value-wise. It's like the particularism versus universalism. So I have seen like communities transform when people go with, can get out of the narrative that they've been taught forever, right? Because we've been taught one narrative, and there's another really important and true narrative. There are two truths about that land, and there are two stories. And only when, seeing people open up to learn about, to relate to. I'm very active in a group called the Sisterhood of Salam Shalom, to bring women together who otherwise would never know each other as Muslim and Jewish women. But those are some examples, right? When you sort of can take down the notion of here's an other that I'm not part of, and you can open up to really seeing and understanding a different side of a story that's also true. I think that brings healing, that brings wholeness, that brings a capacity. You don't have to agree with each other, but you have to see each other as valuable, and worthy human beings, and be able to work with and or be in community with
Mm,
each other.
yes.
Yeah,
Thank you.
yeah,
So, lastly, what's something you're still learning how to do that feels important in your practice?
all of it. um, um, Yeah, I mean, I think I'm learning all of it. And I think I was with another colleague who also has the word wholeness in his, a tagline describing his coaching practice. And he said, "How do you brand wholeness, Simcha?" And we both just started cracking up. And we're like, "I have no idea." So I think how to talk about these things in a way where I can be my authentic self and not be afraid to bring spirituality or soulfulness, certain kinds of language that are not necessarily the language that people expect to hear when it comes to organizational life or so I think there's a real skill in how we speak about what we do and helping people to speaking the right language to the right people without being inauthentic or leaving out of something that's important to me. Um, does that make sense? Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
I mean, learning how to speak about it in a way that connects to other people,
Yeah.
being authentic to yourself, and even bringing the word spirituality or mindfulness, soulfulness, whatever that word is, but being
Yeah.
able to connect. I mean, the whole thing we're talking about is connecting to people, right?
Yeah.
Hmm. Hmm. Anything else in the learning space or that you want to add?
Um, I think the learning space for me is shifting from being about learning theories or frameworks or there's so much amazing training for coaches, and I find that most of us love to learn and are and that's actually a trait of soulfulness, like newness, learning, opening up possibilities. I mean, that's all a soulful approach to life, right? Is to know that there's more, right? But my growing edge is to claim what I have, claim what I know, and put it into action. And sort of like exercising the discipline muscle as opposed to the free flowing, more natural way of being for me. And so there's always learning, always. I think it's a never ending growth spiral. But for me, it's acting and sort of getting my feedback from the universe about my being on track, as opposed to kind of waiting for absolute clarity before I take action. It's really about moving forward and and seeing what unfolds from my action as opposed to from my waiting.
That definitely resonates for me.
Yeah.
For me personally, and in conversations with colleagues about feeling that I never know enough. I need to know more before I
Mm,
do something. And I think that there's learning in the doing
exactly. Exactly. Yeah.
because we're out there taking more courses, getting more assessments, and right? And think, oh, I need more. I need no, actually, no, you don't.
Got
I
it.
I don't.
Yeah, yep. I'm with you. Maybe we could be you know, accountability buddies in making sure that we're not investing in yet another training.
Exactly. Exactly that. I'm sign me up. Yep. So, Simcha, thank you so much. Thank you for bringing your presence into this conversation. And I appreciate how we explored this together.
Yes, thanks so much. It was really fun to talk to you, Abby.
Lovely. Let
Appreciate
me
it.
turn this off.
Okay.